Good evening. Welcome to Pinstripes After Dark. I am Uncle Tats, and I hope that everybody enjoyed their Monday for all it was worth. I want to thank everybody that's come out real late at night. What's going on, Jonathan, Ken, Brad, as always, the troops. Listen, I teased earlier that we were going to go into some Hall of Fame stuff, and I do have it. What's going on, Jason? Lou, what is going on? What's going on? NFE from the Strike Zone. Thank you for jumping in. Tiffany Johnson, welcome. So if you haven't seen it, make sure you go and you check out NFE stream in his channel. Make sure you subscribe to that. Also, Jason from 161 River Ave, who puts together a phenomenal channel with a lot of great content. And I do apologize, the door's going back and forth. But I'm going to get into some of the Hall of Fame stuff as the show goes on, tease a couple of things, some opinions. But I want to start off with some of the news that did come out earlier today. And I want to get into discussion with Roki Sasaki making the announcement that he is not coming to the Yankees. And this is something that we had predicted. Jared, what's going on? Good to see you this late at night. Dev, I see you sneaking in. But and Chris Northrup, what's going on, my girl? Listen, so Sasaki made the announcement that he is not coming to the Yankees. He's been making a couple of announcements that he ain't of the teams he's not going to. You know, and I put out on the Stripe Chronicles account on Twitter that, you know, I'm like, don't tell us where you're not going. Tell us where you're going. Because it's actually aggravating. And it kind of pisses me off because it's like, all right, this isn't reality TV where you have to hand a rose out to everybody going home rather than the ones that are staying. Just make your decision. All right. Teams have a business to run, and they need to know what the fuck is going on. So the best way to do that is to just stop playing games and just make your decision of where you want to play your games. All right. It's really as simple as that. Give me your opinions in the chat. Do you think that this is overkill with all this? You're out, and not really giving us an answer. The Yankees they still have holes to fill. We've been talking about it nonstop. Every channel's been talking about what's the next move that they're going to make, and it's really holding everything up because the Yankees are waiting to find out if they were in the running for him, how serious it was, because they were going to need to know if they were going to be able to spend some of their, risk losing their international free agent money. And that's where it really comes down to. Detroit soft motor kitties overrated. What is going on? Also, Donovan Michaels is in the chat as well. Welcome, Donovan. And he's saying that it is ruining baseball. And then I'll pull up this comment here from Brad, this member's comment. Those Dodgers and Padres have told their IFA players to sign elsewhere. Look, I think that I don't think he's going to the Dodgers. I think that they are very much in the running. I still think he's going to go to somewhere like the Padres. I think he's going West Coast. That was my prediction earlier. So I don't see it happening where it's going to be a Yankees move. It's going to be a move where it's going to be a game changer. I really don't. What move do I want Yankees to sign Dominic Smith? We're going to get to Dominic in a second. And then we got Donald in the chat. What's going on? Donald, my daytime co-host. Sasaki says Jays, Padres, then Dodgers in the final three. So really it's between the Padres and the Dodgers. Well, the Jays getting in the mix is that, was really interesting because we said this morning, it came out right before we went live. If you missed this morning's show, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's a really great discussion between me, Rob, Donald, and everybody in the chat. So I'm like, all right, well, the Jays put their name in the hat. I don't see. I know that the Jays is the whole thing with the taxes with Canada has a lot of people in an uproar, and there's some legalities going on about how that's all getting finagled. So I'm not expecting the Jays to be as serious a contender. I think they're being favored because they were, they've made the last pitch to him before the post date, so it's fresh on the mind. So that's where I see that going. Want to also get to my cousin Nick in the chat. What's going on, Nick? Haven't seen you in the chat in a while. If Suzuki goes to the Dodgers, it's just unfair for the rest of MLB. That would give them like 4 aces. Well, Nick, to be honest, your team could have. All he had to do was go after, some of the pitchers that were free agents, and Cohen decided not to. He's still celebrating the Soto contract. So the Mets, they're kind of putting themselves behind the 8 ball there. But Jason said a huge Japanese population in Toronto. If you say it, I'll believe it. You've never given me bad information that I was not aware of. So yeah, that can alter the decision. Another one from Donald. Yeah, Donald had busy in the chat, and everybody's busy in the chat. Appreciate you. Keep dropping those comments. Let's get this conversation going and building. By the way, I'm pissed. The Yankee aura is cooked. I don't know if it's necessarily cooked, but I think that the fact that, and I've said this before, Donald, and we've agreed to disagree on a couple aspects of it, is the Yankees aren't the only big spenders in town anymore. So you're seeing a lot of, player teams like the Dodgers and the Jays with their money, the new ownership group with the Orioles. They're going to figure out that they're allowed to spend sooner or later. The Mets, the Yankees aren't the only big dog in the yard anymore. So the spending it's going to have to come down to creativity. The 2010s, Brad. Yeah, I think it was once the core 4 had retired. It did lose a little bit of its luster. I'll agree to that, but I don't think that the prestige of the Yankees is dying out. I don't think it'll ever die out. And if he busts out the Super Soakers, yeah, it's one of these. I'm trying to. I still think that the Yankees are always going to be the Yankees. Right, I really believe. There's a reason why players, they put on the jersey, and even though a lot of people will say the same thing, but there is a different attitude about the way you approach the game when you're wearing those pinstripes, and I think that'll always be a factor. People still, players from the past, they still, even if they were there for a decade or a year, will always revert back to how they felt playing for this organization. So I think it's weakened, but I don't think it's dead. I don't think it's gone. I think it can come back. It's just they're going to have to get creative with their contracts. Stop trying to go for all these retreads. Yeah, and that's something we've been talking about a lot on the morning shows and the women's show on Sunday with in Sierra. They're kind of taking a step back and trying to reevaluate their philosophy, because that's something that's been broken for a while with the Yankees, was their philosophy. And the way they've approached spring training this year is they've actually done a really good job with attending to the needs of the team rather than the splash of free agency. So the retreads that they've gotten, though, it's just that temporary fixes until we figure out what we have in the minor leagues. What do we have with guys like Rumfeld and and Jones and some of these other guys, is Peraza going to finally figure it out? Um, if he gets a fair shot, is it going to be worth giving him a fair shot? Because they've destroyed that kid. He's on a long list of players that have been yanktified, as Donald likes to say. And if you haven't already, quick plug for Donald on Saturday with his show. It is absolutely amazing to see him branching out and doing his own thing on the channel, interacting with all of you guys. We all enjoy watching him. He enjoys giving us his take on the solo stage, and supporting him is always a positive. A couple more of these comments here. Let's get to Chris Northrup. Well, the Yankees front office is the reason the Yankee aura is gone. Time for a deep philosophical change, fresh ideas, new personnel, clean house. Chris, I can't disagree with you. I do think they're starting to make that philosophical change where they have addressed need over splash, and not get too crazy with some of these contracts, and then not trying to put themselves behind the eight. But at the same time, they're still reverting back to some of their older ways because they're not going and giving out the big contract. And, it was brought up this morning, and a lot of it is, it's being called as the Ellsbury effect. They don't want to give that big contract anymore. They don't want to put themselves in pretty much financial hell, especially with going over the thresholds of the Cohen tax on the salary. How much more do we have to keep funding these other teams that aren't trying? So for a while, I was one of those just, hey, you have the money, spend. But the way that teams are going about their business now, if they're not going to spend that revenue share and they're just putting it in their pocket, you can't blame these teams for wanting to start penny pinching at least a little bit and not get too crazy with it. But at the same time, I've also said that if the Yankees were willing to give that much to Soto, knowing they were still going to have other needs that needed to be addressed, forget, by all means, just screw the tax at this point. Start the season over. If you have to make adjustments in season and have everything, bring that salary down before the season ends, then you're in good shape. I don't think the Yankees have anything to complain about. Because as long as they keep the fan base happy, we're not going to care what the salary is. We don't care what the overall budget is. Just put a winning team on the field, and we'll be there. It's if you want fans to keep showing up in a positive capacity, keep making the moves that you're making, but you still have to address the needs that still need addressing, and that is lefty bullpen arms. Who's going to, what's going to finish off the infield? Is it going to be in-house? Are they going to look to make a trade? Are they going to look at a free agent? There's so many different ways they can go. And the frustrating part is something that I admire, that I won't say I admire about Cashman. It's not much to admire. But one thing I have to respect about him is he keeps his moves close to the vest. You never know what that man is thinking. He could have something already set up. Now that he knows that he's out on Sasaki, he may already have his next two moves in line, because it didn't take long for him to make a move after Soto. It's almost like, all right, visit, time to move on. There's no use in crying over it. We didn't get him. Next, and continue making moves. I think that's what the Yankees are going to do. And what was Graham asking? Not getting Sasaki, does it really affect the rotation? In my opinion, it doesn't. So we move forward. Absolutely, Graham. It's going to be one of those. We would have had to keep a sixth starter if we had Sasaki. We would have had to go to a six-man rotation, at least for the start of it, until he got acclimated to the MLB. And so with that, you're still going to, I still think the Yankees rotation is actually going to be one of the better rotations in baseball, definitely in the American League. I don't see a rotation that can stack up to the Yankees. the offense is going to be questionable because of some of the aging players, some of the question marks on the guys that that are here. Is Dominguez going to be able to get his career on track? Is he going to be the guy that we saw before he got hurt when he was killing Houston on the field and making him pay for pitching to him? You know, is Wells going to continue to develop and be a pretty much all around catcher with behind the plate and at the plate? Volpe, now that he's got his sophomore slump out of the way, is he going to bounce and start to improve on a few things? Cabrera, I know he's going to be a valuable bench piece, but we're also going to have a full season from Chisholm. What are we going to get for a full season from him? I think it's going to be a positive. And Judge, we know he's going to go back to right field, and that's the other part of it. With the defense alignment, players are getting placed back in their positions of strength. So that's why I think as much as I want to see Chisholm continue to grow at third base, if they're able to get a third baseman and put him back at second and get a third baseman, this way he's at his initial position, then that's a win for the Yankees, because they have too many players playing out of position the last few years, and it's hurt them in the long run. Jonathan, a full season from Dominguez. That's what I'm saying. And it was brought up, this morning about them looking at Verdugo. I don't look. Verdugo served his purpose. He was the stopgap while Dominguez was recovering. Dominguez is ready. It's time to move on. That it's plain and simple. That's just the way it's going to go. I think the Mets pivot for a trade for Dylan Cease. That'd be interesting if they were able to do that. But do the Mets have the prospects to make a trade like that? Montgomery to the Mets too. D-Rod is saying, D-Rod, what's going on? I saw your comments earlier. I did not shout you out. My fault, my guy. Good to see you hang out with us tonight. Jonathan saying he thinks they'll make a move within a week. That could be too. Judge's offense will improve in right field. Well, his two best seasons, he played center. So I don't know if that's – I don't think it's where he plays. I think it's who's around him in the lineup is what's gonna strengthen his numbers with the bat. That's my take on it. I think he's just that talented of a ball player, especially for his size. I don't think I think it's wherever you play some defense, whether it's center field or right field, I don't think it's going to really be a factor. I think it's going to be more of who's surrounding him in the lineup. So they're going to have to figure out how they're going to navigate that. And the other key to the season is going to be to keep Stanton healthy. He's going to miss some time. He's going to end up getting hurt. We know it. If he doesn't, I'd be shocked because we've never had him for a full season healthy. So I just don't think that that's the case. I think it's more who's going to be surrounding him rather than what position he's playing. That's going to be that. And part of it, with now that I'm brought up Stanton, and we're also talking about some of these players that are trying to kind of revive themselves, is we're going to see that the Yankees actually did make a move for a minor league, gave a minor league contract to Dominic Smith. And I think, look, it's a minor league move. Let's not all get all wrapped up about it. Especially that he was, if he was on the Mets or whatever. I don't care what other teams he was playing for. And let's not get all wrapped up in, oh my God, it's Dominic Smith. He's an aging player and blah, blah, blah. It's insurance. That's it. Whether, we need him, knock on wood, if Stanton goes, has to take an IL stint. Goldschmidt, although I don't anticipate really. Yeah, Mastiff in the house. You ain't fucking kidding, Brad. So I think it's a great insurance policy that if we never, if we never see him, it's really a good thing. But if we do have to use him, at least it's something that can give us, it can kind of fill the gap a little bit. And Nick is okay with trading Acuna for Cease. I don't know about that. He would lock up Cease for 4 or 5 years immediately. That's if he wants to make that kind of commitment. Sean, I know you're saying Brandon Donovan's the move to make, but it's also being said that he's not on the block and then he is on the block. So I don't know. It's too many mixed reports on that. Believe me, if they're able to get Donovan, that solves a lot of problems. That solves a lot because we need somebody like that that's going to have that type of defense. And so let her out for a second. So look, the Yankees are always going to make a couple of these minor league deals for some players, whether they're offensive depth, defensive depth, pitching depth. It's the right way to conduct business, especially in the off season. And it seems like Dominic Smith is not ready to hang up his cleats yet. So if the Yankees are willing to just keep him in the minor leagues and in case of emergency break glass, it's not that big a deal. There are a lot of people that say, of all the players that they could have gotten, why him? Don't look too much into it. It's depth. And if you have depth in your roster, it's never a bad thing. No, Arenado. Look, we would take Arenado, Graham. Make no mistake about that. We would definitely take Arenado. So I'm not saying that Arenado is off my trade block. Yeah, D-Rob, Brian Reynolds. And, for left field, didn't work out. It happens. Yeah, they just couldn't come to a decision on the prospect package, which was unfortunate. Because, he was the guy to get a few years ago. Then everybody was like, get him, get him, get him, get him. We talked about it extensively on our shows back then. So I think that it's something that would definitely be, we would be in a better situation right now if we were able to pull that trade off. Arenado's goal would be fantastic at that. It would. And if you're right, and it would put Jazz back at second base, and that's what we need. It would put everybody back in the positions that they're natural at. So you guys don't want Arenado, okay? His numbers have plummeted for a couple of years now. Stay away. Well, I'll agree. Yeah, his numbers have not been the same as it used to be, but we have to get somebody. And for Arenado, if the Yankees and the Cardinals are able to get the money in order, it's like NFE's saying, it's like he's in my head. It's a defensive move. Yeah, but the thing with Bregman is Bregman wants too many years. I don't care about the money is the money. But it's the years, and if I'm going to have to give him extra years, I have to cut down the AAV. I can't give him a big contract. I'm not getting stuck with money at the end of that contract. There's no way I'm doing that if I'm the GM. But exactly, D-Rod, that's why we're saying they're addressing the defense that has been atrocious. And it seems like nobody's in the right position. Nobody knows which way they're going. errors all over the place. I'm like, the Yankees are seeing what everybody else has been seeing. So they're addressing those issues. So it's hard to just kick it, close the door on a player that's going to improve an area of need. And if you're able to get a little spark out of Arenado for a year or two, it'd be worth making that move. I really think it's, and yeah, I don't think Bregman's worth $200 million either. And if we're in the same boat right there. Right, as we get to the next portion of the After Dark show, and that is with the Hall of Fame ballot. And I pulled up a specific graphic because I don't want to go through the whole list. Not just yet. As we get closer to the Hall of Fame discussions start building up, we'll take a deeper dive into some of the others. But I did bring up this graphic here where it has the notables according to ML, the National Baseball Hall of Fame, which is a phenomenal. I love going there. I've said that earlier. The first one I want to bring up is the one that stood out, and it's somebody that it's one of the non-Yankees that I've enjoyed watching, and it's Dustin Pedroia. And I'm very picky when it comes to the Hall of Famers. It's one of those, if you can't figure it out right away, then they're not. But I think Pedroia is deserving of a deeper dive because I think he can get in. I think he's gonna be in the conversation of one of those borderline players where there are some that are just going to completely dismiss him, and some that are going to be like, nope, like NFE's saying, belongs. I think he belongs. We watched the intensity that he played this game in that rivalry, and he was. Let's see how to do that. Let me see how it is. Let me zoom this in a little bit. And nope. I screwed up the graphic. There we go. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not letting me expand it. So some of the others that are on here, we got Pedroia. I think anybody that watched him during that rivalry are definitely going to be on the train of he's a Hall of Famer. Another one that was interesting also, before we get to the obvious ones, that was Ben Zobrist. I'm curious what people think of Ben Zobrist. I think he was the guy when it came to that utility player. He's the one that set the gold standard for it. So for that reason, I think Pedroia is a Hall of Famer. So right now for me, it's 2 for 2. I think Pedroia, I think Zobrist are Hall of Famers, and D-Rod, I think Pedroia gets in. I'm not saying first ballot Hall of Famers, but do they get in? And I think that Pedroia, that puts Pedroia in. I think Zobrist also kind of creating the standard of the utility player. Really, he's the gold standard. Any time that I talked about a utility player, it's always in comparison to this guy. So right there, I think Zobrist is a Hall of Famer. The other one that's been kind of interesting is you think that Jonathan Zobrist is in the Mattingly level, very good, but not a Hall of Famer. That's interesting, Jonathan. I respect your take on it. I always do. Yeah, Graham, that we're gonna get into that type of Hall of Fame picks um, down the road on the Rocket and all those guys. Um, and just to let me just for the time being, because I can't get this to kind of graphic to come in right. We'll just go back to the normal screen and we'll just discuss the players by name. Is it starting to? I don't have my glasses, so let's make it a little difficult. Now, I think the question is before we. I know I teased it earlier. We're going to get to my thoughts on CC Sabathia. Does Ichiro? He's getting in. He's getting in first ballot. Is he going to be the next unanimous Hall of Fame inductee? That's what I'm curious about. It's. I think it's going to be really close. There might be one guy. What's going on, Chris? There might be one guy that I don't see anybody that would say he's not. I don't think we're going to see one of those Jeter situations where he gets screwed by some reporter that had his feelings hurt. I think if I really had to say, apparently the new saying in the show and in the community is "super soaker to the head." I'm going to say he's a unanimous Hall of Famer. Brad also was saying Ichiro first ballot unanimous. Nick is saying he should be. Jonathan saying he should be. You say, yeah, I'm going to get to CC in a second, Chris. Give my thoughts on him. Right now it's saying I think Mattingly would be in the Hall of Fame if he was on the 96 roster. The 94 season killed his chance. I think Mattingly is a Hall of Famer. I'm sorry. I don't see any way around it. There's no argument against it. Like D-Rod's saying, if there was a wild card in the 80s, Mattingly would be a Hall of Famer. The Yankees had a phenomenal record. Yeah, they always had the best. They never had the pitching. The pitching freaking killed that decade. So I just think that when you are a player that inspires and draws in fans the way that Mattingly did, with the way that he played for those, the way he was on top of the game for 6 straight years, I'm sorry. And Mattingly should have been in. I think he's going to get in at some point there, through the Veterans Committee. And it just sucks that his years were cut short because of an injury. If it wasn't for the injuries, it wouldn't even be a discussion. But if Mattingly was healthy, would we have had Tino Martinez? And I want to compare the two of them. They're two separate players that were phenomenal for us. But you have to also look at the 6 degrees of separation, where if one thing doesn't happen, what else happens, and vice versa. So he was the best hands. That he's the reason I was a baseball fan and a Yankee fan. It was Mattingly. That's just the way it was. And there were a lot of players. There were a lot of phenomenal players in that era. To me, Mattingly stood above them all as a kid. So now, before we get too close to the end, let's get to the guy that I want to talk about, and that is CC Sabathia. Is Sabathia a Hall of Fame pitcher? And I want to hear some of your takes before I give my own as we get to a few more of these Mattingly comments and comments about some of the other players that we've brought up. And then I will give you my opinion on CC Sabathia. NFE, Mattingly should definitely be in the Hall of Fame. Nick is saying I can name 10 second basemen in the Hall already that are better than Pedroia. Yeah, you could definitely give that argument, Nick. There are definitely players that are better. I'm just saying my case for Pedroia is beyond the numbers. And it was just and I know there's more to baseball than just the Yankees Red Sox rivalry, but in that era of the rivalry, Pedroia was the face of Boston's rivalry. More so, I think it was more him than Ortiz and the guys and those guys back then. Pedroia, he despised the Yankees, and he went out there. He didn't care who he was playing. He wanted to play better than anybody else on the field because if his team won, it hurt the Yankees. I'm like, that was just something that always stood out to me. Papelbon, yeah, he was another pain in the ass. Jonathan Zedigan here. Mattingly had similar numbers to Puckett, so there's that. Yeah, no, I just see. Look, I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind on a player. If you think he's in, if you think he's out, that's your take. And I'm usually a very hard grader on the Hall of Fame. But this is one I think, I just brought up a couple of players I think really deserve discussion on it. Not so much the guarantees, except for Ichiro. Ichiro, I was just curious if everybody else agreed, like I do, that he should be unanimous. CC dotted me in the leg with a fastball when I was 16. It still hurts. All right. Where was Brad is saying CC's a Hall of Famer, just not first ballot. Sammy, if it wasn't for Mattingly, I wouldn't be a baseball. See, I don't talk out of my, sometimes I talk out of my ass, but not about that. So my take is, I do think it won't be a first ballot. I think Sabathia is going to be a Hall of Famer. I think he's getting in. It's not going to Varitek. That does deserve an argument. And we might have to find a Boston fan from back then that can come on as a guest, and that would make a really fun live debate and discussion about the rivalry back then. that would be a lot of fun. I gotta seriously look into doing that. But with Sabathia, I was looking at some of his numbers for his career. His wins 251, his losses 161. He had over 3,000 strikeouts. He had almost 3,600 innings pitched. He had a 3.74 ERA, which is not great, but it's respectable. It's under 4, and a 1.26 WHIP. I said when you look at the numbers, you're like, all right, it's borderline. And I think that 250 for pitches is the new 500. I don't think I think you're onto something there. They're gonna have to change the margin for the way that pitching is these days. Pitchers don't have as long of a career. They don't go full games. They don't, it's the pitching landscape has definitely shifted where they're not. I think that's the one position that really needs an overhaul of the metrics of what we put people in at. I just think the dominance of Sabathia. Like I said, he may not have had. It's you could have leave the game with a 2-run lead, and you have a crappy bullpen. It's and you know what? Chris is also throwing in. I'm going to throw up my own thought for this one. 250 innings pitched in the AL East, took the Brewers on his back, won a Cy Young, 3,000 strikeouts, a World Series championship. Yeah, Hall of Famer. Sorry. He is a Hall of Famer. And also the way that at the end of his career, he came out, he had the drinking problem, and was able to take himself out. He was team first. We know he lost a bonus because he got himself injected, which name me another player that would do that, right? And in this year coming, nobody is getting themselves thrown out of the game to lose a check. Sabathia did that, but he also, as his career diminished, and his skill, he was losing a little zip on his fastball. He was very good at reinventing himself, where he went from being that flamethrower to a finesse pitcher almost seamlessly. So he's one of those guys that kind of he was a show. He was a reason to watch. And the World Series in 2009. You only had three-man rotation then, because they had Phil Hughes in the pen. So you had Sabathia, you had AJ Burnett, and of course you had Pettit. You had those three guys alone were the reason. They there was no other starters that the Yankees were able to had to trust in, because they had to put the other guy in the pen. So, and he was able to do a lot of these things when even he wasn't at his best. Even towards the end of his career, it's Nick, you're right. This is a good numbers to put up. In his last year, he pitched 107 innings and still had 107 strikeouts at the age of 38 with a diminished fastball. That's just a Hall of Fame kind of ending. It really was. Yankee Stadium dead center was 430 in the 50s. It was 450. Wow. You almost forget about those dimensions because they're not talked about a lot. But that's bizarre. But that's my thoughts on Sabathia and some of the other Hall of Famers. Also, some of my thoughts on the Sasaki going to mentioning that they are not going to be. He's not coming to the Yankees, which kind of sucks because it would have been nice to see him in that rotation. And also, my thoughts on Dominic Smith. And he's going to wrap things up for the After Dark on this Monday. Sorry, my voice is starting to go. It's been a little while since I've done these little solo shows, so I appreciate everybody having a little patience with me on that. But just remember to hit that like button, hit that sub button, and share this out with everybody. Jonathan, you too. Good night. This has been the Pinstripe Chronicles. This is Pinstripes After Dark. This is the place where fans become family, and it's so great to see this family hanging out every show. But with that being said, like I always say, wear those pinstripes of pride and play hard.